In a small town where the sun painted the streets golden at dusk, there stood a quaint little restaurant called the Golden Plate. It was a place known for its delicious food and warm atmosphere, but its reputation was about to be shattered by the actions of one man. The restaurant was owned by a middle-aged man named Leonard, whose passion for cooking was only rivaled by his pride. He had built the restaurant from the ground up, pouring his heart and soul into every dish. However, Leonard's pride sometimes morphed into arrogance, especially when it came to the staff he employed. He turned a blind eye to their flaws, often overlooking their attitudes because they were his friends. One of those friends was a waiter named Mike, a man who had lived in this small town his entire life. Mike was known for his sharp tongue and quick temper. Over the years, he had developed a disdain for anyone who didn't look like him, particularly people of color. His racist remarks were often brushed off as just Mike being Mike, and Leonard, too focused on the restaurant's success, failed to address this toxic behavior. One fateful evening, a young black man named David entered the Golden Plate. David was new to the town, having moved in for a fresh start after facing hardships in his previous home. He had heard about the restaurant's excellent food and was eager to try it. He walked in with a smile, his hopes high, unaware of the storm that awaited him. As David approached the counter, Mike's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. David, taken aback, politely ordered a burger and a soda. But Mike's response was a dismissive scoff. "We don't serve your kind here." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, chilling David to the bone. David's smile faded, replaced by confusion and hurt. He glanced around, noticing the shocked expressions of other patrons. "Excuse me," he replied, his voice steady but laced with disbelief. Mike leaned closer, a smirk creeping onto his face. "You heard me. This place is for people who belong." The restaurant fell silent. David felt a wave of humiliation wash over him. He had faced prejudice before, but this was different. This was a place that was supposed to welcome all. The tension in the air was palpable, and for a moment it felt like the world had stopped spinning. After a few moments of hesitation, David turned to leave, his heart heavy. He could feel the eyes of the patrons lingering on him, some in sympathy, others in disbelief. A deep sadness welled up inside him as he stepped out into the cool evening air, feeling the weight of discrimination settle on his shoulders like a thick cloak. Meanwhile, Mike stood behind the counter, basking in the satisfaction of his actions. He had always felt superior, and this incident only reinforced his belief that he was untouchable. Leonard, who had been in the back preparing the evening special, came out to see what had happened. Mike recounted the story, laughing as he did. "Can you believe it? He thought he could just waltz in here like he owned the place." Leonard's laughter faltered, unease creeping into his voice. "Mike, you can't just treat people like that. We're in the business of hospitality." But Mike waved him off, confident that Leonard would back him up. "It's just a joke, Leonard. He'll get over it." But David didn't get over it. Instead, he took action. After leaving the Golden Plate, he sat down at home and penned a heartfelt post on social media about his experience. He described the humiliation he felt, the disbelief that such racism could exist in a place meant for community. He shared his story with a vulnerability that struck a chord with many. The post quickly went viral. It was shared and commented on by friends, acquaintances, and even strangers who empathized with David's plight. Support poured in from all corners. The next day, a group of residents gathered outside the restaurant, holding signs that read, "We stand with David," and "No room for hate." The protest put Leonard in a difficult position. He had built his restaurant with love, but now it was threatened by the consequences of Mike's actions. Many customers who had once flocked to the Golden Plate now vowed to boycott it until Mike was fired and Leonard publicly apologized. Leonard felt the pressure mounting, but Mike's loyalty made him hesitant to take action. As the days passed, the protests continued, and the media caught wind of the story. Local news reports highlighted the incident, further escalating the public outcry. Leonard watched helplessly as the restaurant's reputation took a nosedive. Sales plummeted, and the once bustling establishment now sat in silence. In the midst of the chaos, David received an unexpected message. a lawyer reached out, offering to help him pursue legal action against Mike and the restaurant for discrimination. David was hesitant. He didn't want to enter a legal battle, he just wanted to be treated with respect. However, he also realized that standing up for himself could help drive change, not just for him, but for others who faced similar situations. After some contemplation, David decided to take the lawyer's offer. With a heavy heart but a determined spirit, he embarked on a legal journey that would expose the racism that had festered in the small town for too long. As the lawsuit progressed, Leonard's guilt began to eat away at him. He realized that he had allowed Mike's toxic behavior to fester for years, thinking it was harmless. The protests had opened his eyes to the reality of the situation, and he understood that he had to take responsibility for his role in perpetuating an environment of hate. One evening, Leonard called an emergency staff meeting. He gathered everyone, including Mike. "I want to apologize to David and everyone who has been hurt by our actions," he began, his voice trembling. "This restaurant was built on the foundation of community, and I failed to protect that." Mike's face twisted in anger. "What are you doing, Leonard? You're going to ruin everything." But Leonard was resolute. "No, Mike, you've ruined everything. Your actions have consequences, and I won't stand by any longer." With that, he announced that Mike was fired. The room fell silent, and Mike's face turned red with rage. "You can't do this to me. I've been with you since the beginning." "Yes, and you've been a cancer to this place. I won't let you poison it any longer." The confrontation led to Mike storming out, furious and humiliated. Leonard felt a sense of relief wash over him, but he also knew that the journey to redemption was just beginning. As the lawsuit continued, David became a local hero. He shared his story in schools and community centers, advocating for anti-racism education. His courage inspired others to come forward with their experiences, and the town began to engage in difficult conversations about race and discrimination. Eventually, the court ruled in favor of David. The restaurant was required to pay damages, but more importantly, it was mandated to undergo diversity training and to implement policies that would ensure a welcoming environment for all patrons. The ruling sent shockwaves through the community, forcing everyone to confront the reality of their biases. With a heavier heart but a clearer mind, Leonard took the ruling as a chance to rebuild. He embraced the lessons learned and became an ally in the fight against racism, dedicating himself to making the Golden Plate a place where everyone felt welcome. As the weeks turned into months, the restaurant began to flourish again. New customers came in, eager to support a business that had turned a corner. Leonard worked hard to create a menu that reflected the diversity of the community, inviting local chefs from various backgrounds to showcase their dishes. David, too, found his place in the community. He became friends with Leonard, who sought his advice on how to create an inclusive environment. Together, they held events that celebrated diversity, turning the Golden Plate into a symbol of hope and change. In a surprising twist, Leonard decided to sell the restaurant, wanting to ensure that it continued on a path of inclusivity. He reached out to David, who was taken aback by the offer. Leonard wanted David to take over, believing that his vision for the restaurant was the key to its future success. David was hesitant at first, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. The idea of stepping into a leadership role, particularly in a place that had once felt so hostile, was daunting. He wasn't sure if he was ready for such a responsibility, unsure if he had the strength to carry this new burden. But as the days passed, the more David reflected on his journey, the more he realized that this opportunity was more than just about him. It was about something far greater. It was his chance to make a difference, to turn something that had been filled with division and animosity into a symbol of unity and compassion. David's heart began to swell with the possibility of what he could do with this newfound power. He wasn't just taking over a restaurant, he was stepping into a role where his actions could touch lives, heal old wounds, and build bridges where there had been walls. He thought of all the people who had felt the sting of prejudice and all the ones who had been silenced. This could be the moment where things began to change for good. With the support of the community behind him, David accepted Leonard's offer. It wasn't just the restaurant he had inherited, It was a promise to himself and to those who believed in him, a commitment to make the Golden Plate more than just a place to eat. It was going to be a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of growth and reconciliation. As David took over, he poured his heart into transforming the restaurant. He changed the decor, embracing a more welcoming, inclusive atmosphere. Bright colors adorned the walls, and the menu was revamped to reflect a broader range of cuisines, honoring the diverse cultures of the community. But David knew that it wasn't just the physical space that needed a change. The soul of the restaurant had to evolve as well. He introduced monthly events celebrating different heritages, inviting people to share their stories through food. These events weren't just about eating, they were about connection, about learning from each other, and about opening up the space for honest, heartfelt conversations. Each event brought a new group of people together, and soon, the Golden Plate became more than just a restaurant. It was a hub for connection, a safe haven where differences were celebrated and where the bonds of community were strengthened with every shared meal. The restaurant was no longer a place tainted by hate. Instead, it became a symbol of healing, where the scars of the past could be faced and overcome. It was a place where every person who walked through the door was treated with the respect and dignity they deserved, where they were reminded that food wasn't just about sustenance. It was about love, about the stories that connected them all, and about the understanding that could only come when people were willing to listen. As the months went by, David watched with pride as the restaurant flourished. The once quiet, isolated space was now buzzing with life, laughter, and energy. The changes had been profound, and with each new event, with each new story shared, he could see the impact it was having on the community. The division that had once defined the space was slowly being replaced with something far more powerful: unity, empathy, and a shared commitment to creating a world where everyone belonged. The Golden Plate had truly become a place of healing, of growth, and of community. And David, standing at the center of it all, knew that he had made the right choice. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was a legacy in the making. In the end, the journey had come full circle. David's path had not only been about standing up for himself, but about showing others that they too had the power to fight against injustice. His courage had sparked a ripple, encouraging those around him to reflect on their own actions, their own prejudices, and their own potential for change. He had become more than just a victim of hate. He had become a symbol of resilience, of the strength that could emerge from even the most painful experiences. In his heart, David knew that his fight was never just for his dignity. It was for everyone who had ever been silenced by hatred, for everyone who had been overlooked or dismissed because of their race or background. For Leonard, too, the journey had been transformative. He had stood at the crossroads of comfort and growth, and he had chosen the path of humility. It hadn't been easy, admitting his flaws and his failures, facing the consequences of his ignorance, but it had been necessary. Leonard had come to understand that change wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about taking responsibility for what had been allowed to fester. He had challenged his own biases and learned the hard way that complacency in the face of injustice only perpetuates harm. But through it all, Leonard had grown. He was no longer the man who had turned a blind eye to his employees' harmful behaviors. He had transformed into someone who recognized the value of true leadership, one that required empathy, accountability, and the willingness to listen. As they stood together in the restaurant, watching the diverse crowd enjoy their meals, there was a quiet pride between them. The once quiet, isolated place had become a vibrant hub, filled with laughter, conversation, and the rich, colorful flavors of different cultures. The room buzzed with energy, the kind of energy that can only come from true acceptance and inclusivity. The weight of the transformation wasn't lost on either of them. They exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of everything they had gone through to reach this moment. They had faced the darkest parts of themselves, and in doing so, had forged something far stronger than they had ever imagined. The Golden Plate was no longer just a restaurant. It had become a symbol of something far greater. It was a testament to resilience, to the growth that comes from facing hard truths, and to the power of community when it comes together with a shared purpose. What had started as a place tainted by prejudice had been reborn into a sanctuary where everyone could belong, where respect and kindness were not just given, but demanded. And in that moment, with the warmth of the restaurant surrounding them, both David and Leonard knew that they had created something beautiful. A place that wasn't just about food. It was about healing. It was about offering more than just a meal to those who walk through the door. It was about offering hope, understanding, and a promise that no matter the hardships, there was always a way forward. Together, they had turned pain into something powerful. And the golden plate was a living, breathing testament to the strength of community, the importance of redemption, and the unbreakable spirit of those who dare to challenge the status quo. In the heart of that small town, the lessons learned from this journey would forever resonate, passed down through the generations. People would speak of how one moment, one decision, could ignite a shift in an entire community. It was a testament to the power of courage, how the bravery of one person, standing up for what's right, could spark a change that no one could have predicted. For David, the path he had walked was not just about him. It was about the town, the people, and the future they could now build together. As he looked around the bustling room, filled with laughter and the sounds of heartfelt conversations, David's chest tightened with emotion. It was overwhelming, in the best way possible. He could see the diversity in the faces around him, the different cultures, the shared humanity, all gathered under the roof of what had once been a place of hurt. Now it was a sanctuary of hope, and David's heart swelled with pride. He had been a catalyst, but the transformation was collective. People had come together in a way that felt right, that felt just. What had started as an ugly incident had been rewritten by the town's resilience, by their willingness to do better. He stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The vibrant energy in the air, the sense of unity that filled the space. It was as if the shadows of the past had been wiped away by the light of today. David had faced hatred, and in return, he had offered grace. It was that grace that had changed everything. He had not just fought for himself, but for the community's future. A future where no one would ever have to endure what he had, where love would replace fear and understanding would drown out prejudice. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the golden plate. Its soft light spilled across the tables, reflecting off the glass windows and filling the room with a warmth that seemed to hold more meaning now. The sunset wasn't just the end of another day. It was a symbol, a promise, a reminder that as long as people continued to stand up for what was right, as long as they kept their hearts open, there would always be hope for a better tomorrow. David could feel the weight of that promise in the air, and as he stood there with Leonard, watching the bustling crowd, he knew that this was just the beginning. Together, they had built something far more beautiful than a restaurant. They had built a foundation for a future rooted in respect, love, and unity. And that, David realized, was the true legacy of the golden plate. A place where kindness would always be served and where the darkest moments could be transformed into the brightest of tomorrows. Hey everyone! I hope you enjoyed the story and felt the impact of the journey we've just shared. If you did, please take a moment to show your support. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment below to let me know what you thought. Your feedback means the world. And if you think someone else would love this story too, don't forget to share it with them. Let's keep spreading the message of hope, unity, and change. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.